Hello.
Hey, hi, Shilpa.
Hi. Sorry. Let me just turn. Oh, okay. Are we not doing video?
We are. I just made you the co-host, so you should be able to do it now.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Doing good. Good morning. Oh, it's evening for you guys, right?
Good morning for you. All
Yeah.
right. So I think we have a lot of people joined us already. Good evening,
Awesome.
everyone.
Good evening.
So yeah, if you could type on the chat window, if you can hear us well, that would be great. Awesome. Hi, Harshit. Hi, Udit. Aniket. Good evening. Arun Pratap, Nadeem, Mansi, Chirag. Great. Awesome. I'm glad you can hear us perfectly fine. So cool. So welcome all of you once again. And we have another very exciting session today. And we are going to talk about something very, very interesting. We've not really covered this topic before. And we have a guest with us who will also be discussing about her journey, her her choices, and how she got to where she is today. So we will be discussing about that too. So great. So before I get started, if you all could just type in where all are you joining from, and as usual, I love reading all the locations that people joining us from. So great. Kolkata, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Interesting. Muscat. Okay. Hi, Preeti from Hi, Nadeem from Muscat, Gurgaon, Dubai, Kushagra from Dubai, Dehradun, Lucknow, Mysore. Awesome. I'm so excited right now. Ahmedabad. Awesome. Awesome. So, the good thing about, rather COVID has not been great for any of us, but what has helped CrackVerbal is also that, we've been able to make sure that we get great talent from across India, and that has really helped us. So today my team is from all over India. I have somebody sitting in Hyderabad, somebody in Chennai, somebody in Pune, somebody in Noida, right? So we don't need to be restricted to just where we are located. So that's been awesome for us. So cool. So let's get started. Let me just quickly have some ground rules. If you have any specific questions about your profile or what we are discussing, please put it on the Q&A window. We will be discussing everything which is in the scope of this webinar or this live chat session. We'll discuss every question after after we in the end of the session. And if everybody can listen to me, I'm sure and if you have a voice issue at your end, please let us know. I'll just quickly check with others, so that you can also get to know whether it's a problem at your end or our end, right? So those kind of things we'll be figuring out. This session is also live on YouTube. So if at all there's something that you've missed, you want to revisit, you can always go back and watch on YouTube too. All right. So cool. So thank you so much, guys. Let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm Shreekala. I'm one of the co-founders of CrackVerbal. I was an engineer. I worked for HP for around 7 years before I joined in CrackVerbal full time. I'm also part of, I'm one of the fellow for ISB Goldman Sachs Women Entrepreneur. I'm also part of the Cherry Blair Foundation, where I help women entrepreneurs. With that, let me just introduce our guest today, Shilpa. Shilpa, if you could just tell us a bit about yourself, what you've been doing, and just a little bit of background before I get on to, specific questions. Maybe you could just introduce yourself.
Of course. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here and welcome to this webinar. So I am currently in US, in Boston. So I'm working at Wayfair, which is a large e-commerce, home decor and furniture company. Working in the supply chain space, been here for a year and a half. And before that, I was getting my master's here in the US. And before that, I'm from Bangalore as well. So I was in Bangalore before moving here. I have a strong background in operations, as well as supply chain. So continuing to stay in that space. And we'll talk more about that during the session today.
Awesome. Thank you, Shilpa, for a quick introduction. So, we would all like to know is a little bit more about, your background pre-masters, right? So, if you could just tell us about your educational background first, like, what was your educational background? Did you do engineering or did you do, what kind of graduation did you focus on? Were you like born and brought up in Bangalore? How was it?
Yeah. So, just a little bit of background about myself. I have lived in Bangalore for most of my life. I was born in Kerala and then just moved to Bangalore, I think, when I was pretty young. I studied in Bangalore for high school, elementary school, all of that. And then I went on to do engineering. So I went to RV College of Engineering. If you guys are from Bangalore, you may be familiar with that. I did telecommunication engineering, and a little bit like kind of into engineering. I realized that like core engineering was not my thing. So that's when I just like I was looking to make kind of this shift into something different. And supply chain kind of came up at that time. So yeah.
Right. So, did you have any kind of work experience before plan on the masters?
Yep. So when I was graduating, I think in my final year of engineering, like the last semester, we had an option in RV to kind of do all the classes, get all your credits in the first 7 semesters of your program. And then in the last semester, what they offered was, okay, do you want to do a full internship? So at the time, I got an internship offer from Cisco Systems. So it was in the supply chain space. So it was in supply chain operations. And I was like, okay, I'm in engineering, not my thing. I want to make a move. So it was a very good opportunity for me at the time. So I took on this internship. It was like a full-time internship, what they call a co-op. So I was spending like Monday to Friday, every single day, like full all the hours there. And then I moved on to getting like a full-time offer from them. So once I graduated, I joined Cisco Systems full-time. And I was there for, I would say, about 3 years, working in supply chain operations, looking at kind of fulfillment of orders. How do kind of the orders that the customers place, how is it, does it reach our customers kind of hassle free without any issues on the way? And a little bit of new product introduction and so on.
Right, right. So yeah, so I
Yeah.
think telecommunications to Cisco makes perfect sense. I guess most of the people with that kind of background would love to, get onto, Cisco. So is this something that, because it is still not what you actually, learned in your undergrad, right? So was this supply chain thing you just wanted to try out, what supply chain is all about, and then you enjoyed it and then you spent 3 years working on it? How was that?
So I think what happened was when I was in engineering, I was new to supply chain at the time. I think when Cisco came to RV looking for people to hire for this, like for this internship, it was new to everybody there. So we kind of learned, I know all the people who were interviewing at the time, we just learned about it a little bit. We're like, okay, what is supply chain? And, let's study a little bit before the interview. So that's when I was like, okay, this sounds amazing. I can't believe I didn't know more about it at the time. And I think at the time, everyone like thought supply chain was about logistics and moving things around, but it's not. That's kind of what I learned through my internship and my work experience at Cisco, that there was more to supply chain. It's literally going from from when a product is like in the inception phase. Okay, who decides what product to sell, then how many of it to sell, then the whole planning phase, from how much to like from the ideation phase to when you actually manufacture and you send to the customer. There's like this big chain of events that happen. So that's when I was like, okay, this sounds amazing. This is really interesting. It touches every single product that you use, like every single thing that you wear, use at home has a supply chain. So then I wanted to, okay, like let me learn more about it now. Now that I learned just about a little bit about one space in supply chain when I was at Cisco, and I wanted to kind of get a full rounded understanding about it. So that became kind of my motivation to, okay, let me enter the supply chain industry now, right? Like, let me learn more about it and understand more about it. And I think that was a good time because now supply chain is growing so much. Every product company that you see has a supply chain division.
Right, right. So, when you thought of doing a master's, were you very clear that you wanted to do an MS in supply chain, or were you also evaluating an MBA as an option? Because most of, if you're looking at roles in, most top companies also, if you're looking at a supply chain, manager kind of a role, it's also one of the post MBA careers, right? If you're taking electives at supply chain. So what was on your mind, and did you think of that as an option?
I did. In fact, when I first started working, I was always inclined towards doing an MBA. And I was always telling myself, okay, in 3 years or in 5 years, I'm going to get an MBA. So that was always at the back of my mind. But I think when it actually came to doing some research and figuring out what do I want to do, where do I want to study, that's when I started like looking into some of these master's programs. And some of them were very attractive. So in general, when you're looking to do an MBA as well, you have some kind of understanding of what you want to specialize in. For example, let's say you want to specialize in finance, or you want to specialize in marketing, or operations and supply chain. So I was always more inclined towards, I knew I wanted to specialize in operations as well as supply chain. So then it came down to looking at, okay, should I do an MBA versus master's, an MS? So I think there were a lot of factors that kind of helped me decide between the two. So let's just break it down, right? So the first thing was, okay, I have an MBA, which is typically a 2-year program, versus versus this MS in supply chain management that I found, right? That is a 1-year program. So it's like you're spending 2 years. There's a little bit of like a cost factor associated with it, right? It's 2 years you're spending away from your job versus 1 year that you're spending away from your job. Then there's the whole expense of it. You're paying for 2 years, you're paying tuition and living expenses for 2 years versus you're paying all that expense for 1 year. So I kind of did a little bit of like what would be my return on investment if I got an MBA versus an MS. Then the second thing came down to, okay, an MBA is very generalistic. Okay, so you learn, yes, you get this full-rounded business education and you learn all about it, but I wanted something more specific. I knew I did not specifically have any interest in going into like exploring marketing or finance and so on. So that's why this MS program kind of became more, it became more attractive. And it was like the perfect kind of like middle point between a technical education versus a completely business-oriented education. So that was that bridge where I could do both. So that, and then in addition to that, I think just in general, like the political climate in the US of getting visas, not getting visas and things like that. So that added on to it and just made the MS a strong case for me.
Right, right. So in terms of the process also, right now, one is, did you start with thinking that, okay, these are the courses I want to focus on, and then you go back and figure out that what is it that I need to do to apply to these programs? Or did you, like a lot of people say, okay, let me take this test first. I want to take my GRE and GMAT, and then I'll figure out what I want to do. What was your approach?
Mine was, I figured out what I wanted to do first. So I identified what course that I wanted, just because sometimes the process may be different. Like some programs may require GMAT versus some programs may require GRE. So just before you kind of get into that studying phase for that entrance exam, for me, it made sense to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? What are the requirements for it? Like, what are the different tests I need? Are there any prerequisites in terms of educational background, work experience, and so on? So I took that approach, but I'm sure, any other approach is also fine.
Right, right. In terms of, GMAT versus GRE, what was your thought process for choosing GRE?
So I spoke to a lot of people who gave both GMAT and GRE. And in general, I heard that GMAT was just harder. And at the time when I was preparing, I don't think I had much time in terms of like, okay, let me take about 6 months and prepare for this exam. it kind of became like a last minute decision of some sort to apply for this program. So I was like, okay, the deadline is, I think I was in August or September, and the deadline was for the first round was November. And I was like, okay, I have 2 months. There is no way I'm going to be able to, let's be honest here. There's no way I can start preparing for GMAT and do well in GMAT even, right? So I knew and I'd identified the programs that I was applying to at the time, and they all took GRE or GMAT, either one. So I was like, okay, GRE is the way to go. So that was, to be honest, that was just my sole reason why.
In fact, you did pretty great for just a 2-month prep GRE also. That's amazing. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so a couple of points and takeaways that I had from the last point, that the schools that you chose or the programs that you chose were, one, based on the duration of the program. Second is whether they were STEM programs, because that was very important for you. Were there anything else that, and obviously you focused on supply chain because you had a background on supply chain and you wanted to focus on something specific to supply chain. Were there anything else that you had in mind? Cost was that, or was geography a requirement? Did you think of any other schools across, maybe in Europe or Asian schools? It was something like that on your mind?
So I targeted only the schools in the US. Just because I had some family here in the US, so my sister was here working at the time. So I was like, okay, I already know people in the US. I have family there, so I didn't want to move to a completely new country at the time. So that way I did not consider any of the other countries. And the second thing was, for me, I was clear that after the program, I wanted to work in that country. So I know in general in Europe and UK, it's harder to stay back after your program in terms of visa sponsorship and so on. So whereas US gave you that opportunity, right, with STEM and things like that. So, and then like you said, STEM was definitely one factor. Then the third thing is just what kind of jobs after this program, am I targeting companies like big tech companies like Amazon, Apple, and things like that? How easy or hard is it to get the job? Because you're putting an investment, you're paying money for it, you're putting a lot of energy going to, studying for an MS here. You're putting a lot of time as well. So to me, it was all about, okay, what happens after? Like how hard or easy is it to get a job and things like that? So in that sense, even kind of the reputation of the school mattered, right? So just in terms of, okay, is it one of the top 20 schools or top 30 schools that people typically recruit from?
So how many schools did you apply to, once you finalize these lists, how many schools did you actually apply to in US?
I think I applied to about 4 schools. So I had applied to MIT, which was actually my ambition. So typically when you're looking to apply, you kind of group your colleges into 3 different buckets, right? One is like, okay, easy. I can get it. I know I can get it, easy. The other is kind of your safe. Okay, I think I will get it. I do fit in this profile. And the third bucket is ambitious. So I kind of categorized into these 3 buckets, and I applied to, I think, Michigan Ross. They have a very similar supply chain management program. Then I applied to Berkeley, which was operations focused program. And then I applied to Columbia Business School. It was a master's, but it was like a master's in business education or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. So at the time, MIT was like my ambitious choice. But I was like, okay, let me go ahead and apply and see where that goes.
Right. So what was the process that you followed? Because, we as Indians are not very used to writing too much, storytelling. And, that's always a challenge for all of us, right? So was that a challenge for you? And, how long did it take? Because I think from the time you finalized the schools to taking the GRE to applying, everything was like very quick, right? So
yeah,
how long did that take? And, what do you think is, from your perspective, if you have to, take a step back and say that, hey, I should have spent more time on this. Obviously, you got into your ambitious list, which is great. It worked perfectly for you. But if you have to just take a step back and think that, okay, what could you give, a suggestion to someone who's aspiring to applying, say, this year or next year? What
Yeah.
would be your thought process be in terms of what should be their do's and don'ts when it comes to the
Yeah.
application process?
I think like, so one thing that I did was I started too late, right? So it's so like there's no rush in getting your master's or MBA or whatever you choose to do. Just take your time and figure out, like, make sure it's the right choice for you, right? Like, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, that it's all about going and getting the master's degree. It's not. You need to make sure that it works for you, it is right. You're investing a lot in it. So do your research really well. And I looked at different courses and things like that. And before I actually finalized on this one SCM program, I was looking at MBAs. I was looking at like general masters in management program and like operations management program and so on. And I finalized on a few courses and a few programs that were of interest to me. And I spoke to a lot of people that were actually like enrolled in that program at the time. So I spoke to someone who was enrolled in the SEM at MIT program. I spoke to someone who was enrolled in the same program in Michigan Ross. So just to get their perspective of what do they think of the program, what do they think of like in general the economic climate, in a different country. Like they're in there right now. So I would highly recommend doing that. I think that's very helpful. And at the time, I was under the impression that I think all the round one deadlines typically happen in November, December. And I was under the impression that I have to apply in round one. Like whatever happens, round one is the way to go because, like that gives you higher chances of getting it. That is not true. I was kind of like, I would say, putting pressure on myself to quickly go into round one. But I did not, in the end, I did not apply in round one even, just because I didn't feel I was fully prepared with my application. So I took my time. I just said, okay, it's okay. The round two deadlines are typically in January and February. So I was like, okay, that's still fine. I just wanted to perfect my application a little bit. I took my time and then I went for the round two, applied in round two. So I would just say, take your time, do your research, and just, there's no rush in any of this.
Right, absolutely. I agree. And I completely second Shilpa on this aspect, that it's extremely, extremely important to put in your bit of research too, because what most people are, all your decisions are normally because of someone, or because of, your friends who've been there, or, somebody, your relative, or some peer, or somebody at work. It's very, because it's not that every school might be the best for you, right? So you might want to even look at what are the kind of options, like Shilpa's mentioned, the curriculum, whether the culture is something that, maps to what you want to get to, right? And, when you talk to the people over there, you also get to know whether, you resonate with the kind of culture, they have, or like some schools are super competitive, some schools are very academic in nature, some schools focus a lot on, case study approach. So you might also want to figure out what exactly do you like to, and do that research to figure out what are the kind of schools you'd want to apply to, right? So that's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about MIT and this program, because MIT is like the one of the top schools, and getting into that school and getting into the program of your choice is quite an achievement, right? So
Yeah,
tell me about the course, the cohort, the diversity. Maybe I'll keep asking you questions so you can just
of course.
tell me a little. So was it the first time that you were visiting US when you actually went for this program?
I had visited US like when I was working at Cisco. I had visited US then, like just for work, and I had gone to California. But it was the first time I was coming to kind of the East Coast and Boston and Cambridge area. And just talking about the course a little bit, it's amazing. I think to me it was life changing. It was probably one of the best decisions that I had taken in like going for this program. So what's good about it, right? I think this SCM program at MIT it sits perfectly between kind of like the engineering school as well as the Sloan Business School, right? So you can choose your own path. yes, there are a few kind of very required courses that you have to do, but you can choose like what you want to do. Do you want to specialize and learn more about data analytics? You can totally do it. Do you want to learn more about like business and management oriented stuff? You can, go ahead and take classes at Sloan. And everything that you're doing, you're doing together with Sloan, you're doing together with all the like different programs that are there. There's no like, oh, you're from SCM, you're from this program, you're from this, you can't mix. So that was a really good experience, that you're just interacting with so many other people from completely different background. I think some of the like I just wanted to take this one class in astrophysics just for the fun of it. So I was like, okay, I have some time, let me go and take it. And it was awesome. It was really interesting. So the fact that you have so much, I would say, like freedom and the ability to go pursue whatever you want, that was amazing. Then like let's talk about kind of the people who come there and diversity, right? So this program, I think it's kind of split into two parts. So we have one group of cohort, which is called the SCM residential. So it's what I went for, where everyone come. It's a 1-year program. You come, you spend the 1 year on campus. And then there's something called supply chain management blended, which is a mix of online versus on campus. A lot of internationals don't choose the second option because it does not give you the ability to work in the US after that. So let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the residential program that I went for. We're a group of 40 students. So that's amazing, because typically in MBA programs, you have like 400, 500, 600 students. So you really don't get to know all of your like classmates. So we were 40. They had a lot of like events, a lot of workshops, a lot of courses for us, 40 of us, to do it together. So we really became like a family. It was like our family away from home. All of us were like living together in one dormitory. And those are the memories that you make. And I think when we joined, like our program director was just like, look, you guys are here just for a year. It's going to fly. It's going to fly by. And at the end of the year, no one's going to remember what grade you got in this class or what grade you got in this subject, but everyone's going to remember like all the memories you make here. And they did a very good job of bringing us like closer and closer. And these are the connections that you make like for life. Like 5 years later, if you want to change your job, you know someone at your dream company or another company, and then you just ping that person and be like, hey, can you refer me? It's an easy like alumni connection way, right? That was, and then I think we were from like 20 different countries. There were people coming from all over the world. They really try for that diversity. There were people of completely different backgrounds, different work experience, different like ages. I think at the time they do require like the minimum 3 years work experience. And I went at exactly that. So I was the youngest person there. And then you have someone who's kind of in his like, he's almost 50 and he's coming for this program. Wow. So that was amazing. The fact that I'm here, who's just 3 years experience, like working with someone who has so much experience. And he had like, that person he was a lawyer. So you see how like the backgrounds are completely different, and that's a very good perspective, right? Like you get to learn from them, you get to work with them. So that was the best part of it.
So how does this map? Like I'm curious to know what would a lawyer do in supply chain? Like how does that map, and how does the school look at it more, since they would have thought of something when they are looking at that person as adding to the diversity of the class, right? So
right.
How does that work?
So I think they look for different backgrounds. Like they don't want 5 different Shilpas who've got an engineering background, who worked at a big tech company in supply chain, right? They want completely different background. So that's why this one person who's a lawyer, he had like a little bit of transportation background there. So that made sense as to how that fits into supply chain. And then I think there were people who had like arts background and things like that, but who've sort of worked in the supply chain realm of things. So that they're not new to supply chain, but that was pretty interesting.
Right. And in terms of, this is one question that a lot of students always ask me, that what is the average score, Indian would require to get into, this kind of a school? Is there like a published average specifically for international candidates, because Indians always apply with higher scores, right? So what is the range of people with GRE scores or GMAT scores over there?
I don't know. No one spoke about it. Like, it was never a thing that, okay, let's compare our GMAT scores or GRE scores. There were quite a few Indians, because I think this program doesn't it doesn't spend like stress too much on the GRE score. Yes, you need to get, I would say, like, in my mind, a good range for GRE would be around 320. 320 plus. That's just my opinion, so don't quote me on that. But what they're trying to understand is your work experience. It matters a lot for this program. Like they said, minimum is 3 years work experience, and it's good. It helps you when you come to this master's program. I know a lot of master's programs do not require work experience, but this is kind of more, I would say, business oriented. So they're looking for your, like, in classes, they're looking for your perspective. You need to know, you need to be able to participate in the discussions in the class and things like that. And even to get a job after that, work experience is really important. So I think the program kind of puts a lot of weight on that instead of your GRE score or GMAT score.
Right. So how does your day look like? Like, when do how did your day look like? You started your classes in the morning, or how many classes do you need to take in a day? How did it work?
So that model is actually very different from like education in India. So I got my undergrad at RV, right? And typically a day at RV, the way it looked was morning till, like, I think 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. were back-to-back classes. Then you get some time off for lunch, and that's it. This is completely different. So when I first went, we had to pick our classes. Okay, and you make your schedule and things like that. So I was picking my classes, and I was just like, wait, my calendar looks so empty. I have this one class on Mondays from like 8:30 to 10 a.m. Then I have the whole afternoon off, and then I have another class on Monday, like 3 p.m. to 4:30. That is so empty. Maybe I should add more classes. But then I spoke to a lot of people, and they're just like, no, do not add more classes. Like, we recommend you take about like 3 to 4 subjects per week. Do not like fill up your calendar, because the way it works is, yes, you're in a class from 8:30 to 10. You get a lot of homework, a lot of assignments that you need to do post class. So even before you go to a class, you have to do a pre-read. So the professor will send you, okay, before you come to class, read this and come, and then you'll be asked questions on it. You should participate and things like that. So you have a pre-read, so you need time to do that. Then after class, they give you a lot of assignments. So every week you have a deliverable. Now these assignments, at least at MIT, it was all group assignments. There's nothing you're doing individually, maybe initially, but they just want to get, like, you choose your group, you choose like 2 other people to work with, and all of you get together and just, work on it together. I remember there was this one class. I think we just had 3 hours of the actual class per week, but the assignments were, oh my gosh, they were intense. We would spend like 15 hours per week and like roughly 3 to 5 hours per day solving that assignment. So all of you get together in a room and you're actually working on it. So that was very different from what we're typically used to in India. And that was interesting. That was a completely different model. So it was great. So just coming back to your question, Shri, my day typically looked like in the morning, there was a little bit of a few hours of class. And we would spend the day there working on our homework. You also have companies coming to recruit you. This is a 1-year program. So like, it starts in September. By October, November, companies are on campus trying to recruit you for a job. So you need to prep for interview. You need to study about the company. You need to study about the role and things like that. Then again, maybe in the afternoon, there'll be a couple of more classes that you'll attend. In the evenings, again, you're going to go back home, finish your assignments. And typically at nights, we used to do kind of like some social get-togethers. Everyone would meet together, go for dinner, or do dinner at someone's house and things like that. So that was the typical day.
Right. Awesome. So like most master's program, do you get chance to do like an assistantship or anything of that sort? Because, if you've not packed up your day so much, is that an option in a 1-year program, especially?
It's not. So they do not let you do kind of any kind of research assistantship or teaching assistantship because this is a 1-year program. And what they've done is they've cramped 2 years worth of education in 1 year. So you're basically doing like a 2-year MBA in 1 year. So it's very intense. It's a lot of work. So they do not allow anyone to do any kind of this assistantship because they want your focus on this. So, but you do kind of like this project with another company. Okay. So MIT has a lot of sponsor companies, like big companies that kind of sponsor them. So you do a project, kind of like a consulting project for those companies. So it's like a year-long project through the course of your program. You do not get paid for it, so that's not a thing. But it gives you an experience of how to apply, things you're learning through this program into a real-world experience.
Right. So when you say so you mentioned the dormitory part of it. So you mentioned it's a residential program. So it's like mandatory for everyone to stay in the dorm, or do you all, even for the residential program, people can go stay outside? Maybe it's a cheaper option. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah. So they don't mandate where you should stay. They do give you the option of staying on dormitories, but and of course, like if you can stay off campus as well. But I think in general, like 97, most of our class stayed on campus, and maybe 1 or 2 people stayed off campus. Now, the reason being, this is like, you're going to spend a lot of hours in your classes, in your college, either attending classes, working, and so on. You want to be close by. You want to stay very close to your college and so on. You don't want to spend that time traveling to and from wherever. Second thing is, it's just a 1-year program, right? So imagine like, getting an off-campus apartment, setting it up, then in like a few months, you have to again start selling your things and give it away. So all the internationals stayed on campus. Most of the Americans that came from here as well stayed on campus. Only a couple of people who were from Boston region, who knew the area, chose to stay off campus. And it's really valuable to stay on campus because all of you are together at the end of the day and everyone's staying in kind of like one building or in the same area. So it helps you socially as well.
Right. So, I had one question, that supply chain itself is a huge umbrella, right? There are so many, aspects to even supply chain. So do you have an option to specialize on some specific aspect too? Like, for example, say procurement or, something around that. Is that an option in this particular course?
Absolutely. So what happens is in fall, typically when you go, you have a few required courses that you must take. Now, these required courses are there to help you give a good, like, solidify your fundamentals in supply chain. So it's like this big course that touches every single part of supply chain. And it's important to like understand the fundamentals. And they have a few courses like that. Now in spring, you can it's all electives and like you can choose whatever you want. Like you pick your specialty. So that's where if you're someone who wants to specialize in procurement, you get to pick classes that are related to procurement. If you want to specialize in planning, which is what I did, you get to pick classes like in line with that. Data analytics, pick your classes. And I think some of them specialized in transportation. So you have to, like, typically in spring semester, that's the process that I followed. You can choose whatever like specialization you want to go in within supply chain management, or maybe not even, like if you want to learn completely into like dive into analytics or sustainability, you have the freedom to do so.
Right. So, a lot of my students who go for an MBA program always tell me that, I wished before I started the program, I should have learned Excel very well. Or I should have gone through some case study, how to actually make the best of a case study class, or, do some kind of background work on, do some background course on finance before I reach there. Did you feel that, you would have been better equipped if you knew something beforehand? Now that looking back, was there something that you felt you would have, if you had that, maybe you wouldn't have you need to put so much effort during the course? Was there something like that?
So I think one thing to note is, like I said, this program has a lot of diverse people, right? There's a lot of people that come to this MS after getting an MBA. Okay, so they already have like this MBA educational background, and then they come for this master's. And one thing like that I wish I had actually learned more about finance. Your finance is everywhere. You're going to use it. Okay, you don't have to be like an accountant, but you're going to use it in every place. Any company has finance, right? And I was new to finance at the time, just because I think my engineering program did not like talk much about it. I did not have an MBA and so on. So I think all the people that I spoke to after I joined, a few of my friends who are coming in, I said, look, learn finance. It's very important. Excel, definitely you need to know Excel, because you're going to use that in your projects. You're going to use that in classes for doing assignments and so on.
Right. Awesome. So, again, more for the specialization, right? MS in supply chain. What kind of people should not choose this? I understand, because sometimes what happens is it's more like, whoa, maybe it's an easier way to, get to US, or easier way to get into some people, there are these kind of thoughts that come to our mind when we are actually looking at the various options. Anything that you have on your mind which you feel that it might not be a cut for specific, maybe people with specific backgrounds, or is there anything like that on your mind?
So I would say you should choose SEM only if you have some kind of a supply chain or operations background. Like if you have a completely different background, let's say you're mostly tech oriented, you're a software engineer, it makes no sense to come into the SEM program, right? Maybe you won't even like it. Or if your background is mostly into marketing or like finance and things like that, that's not for you as well. And the second thing is, this has business concepts as well as technical concepts. We code a little bit, like in SQL, Python, and so on. You're not like, that's not your job. That's not going to be the main focus of your role, but you will learn that a little bit. You will use it in your day-to-day job as well. So you should have an appetite for that. So I think like someone who wants to get that technical experience and learn all of that as well, then you should apply for it. It's not an MBA.
Yeah, I agree completely, because I think Python and these kind of tools are also used a lot to understand data, right? To create data models and statistical models, right? So yeah, I agree. In terms of what are the different kind of career options so you are a supply chain planner at Wayfair, right? So what are the different kind of career options people can get into? If you could just tell us a little bit about that.
So when you're in this program, they tell you that there's like kind of two routes you can take. Okay. So the first one being consulting. So you can go into management consulting firms like Deloitte, McKinsey, BCG, and things like that. That's like the same route that a lot of MBAs take, right? So you'll be it could be management consulting, it could be supply chain consulting, and you could choose like your expertise in that. So you can go the entirely consulting route and aim for those companies. And the other route that you can go is work in industry, which is what I chose to do. So when you're working in industry, you'll be working at like at a company of your choice, right? But you'll be working in a supply chain role there. So typically people choose to go to like Apple, Amazon, Wayfair, Google, Microsoft, and like a lot of tech companies, as well as some like boutique firms that are focusing on like pharma, let's say manufacturing and things like that. So if you chose to go to industry, you kind of get to choose which part of supply chain you want to be in. Like, do you want to be in sourcing and procurement? Do you want to be a transportation specialist? Do you want to be in planning and so on?
All right. You mentioned consulting, right? So when you say consulting, does it specifically focus on, say, operations consulting for people, or is it like open to, any kind of consulting?
It will mostly focus on operations consulting, but it's going to be up to you. So typically you'll join one of these management consulting firms, and then when you join, they kind of ask you, hey, what is your background? What is your specialty? And then you would choose supply chain or operations consulting, right? Because that is your background.
Right. Cool. So tell us about your, work at Wayfair. What do you do? What does your day look like? What are your key challenges? It's interesting to know because I think how e-commerce, maybe e-commerce looks very similar everywhere. Is there a difference? Maybe there is a difference in the, way it's handled, culture-wise. I'm not sure. So how does it work? Because again, Wayfair is similar to maybe a urban ladder in India, or
Exactly.
something like
Exactly.
that, right? So how does it work, and what do you do, and what are your key challenges that you face every day?
Sure. So, just a little bit about my work and like about the company, right? So, Wayfair is an e-commerce kind of home decor and furniture company. So, like she said, they're kind of, I think, Urban Ladder, and I think there was something called Pepper
Pepper
Fry in
fry.
India. I don't,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
don't know if they're, yeah.
That is, yeah.
So it's like that. We're just a platform, so we don't manufacture anything. We kind of get, we have our suppliers. We just Yeah, it's just a platform connecting the suppliers to the customer. So we don't make anything.
Hmm.
So the core business of the company is supply chain, right? So that's pretty cool. And specifically in Wayfair, I am in supply chain planning. So what I do is within supply chain planning, I look at, okay, how's our network footprint? Do we have enough warehouses in the country? Do we have enough space for all this volume that's coming in and that's going out? Do we need to kind of, and then I look a little bit more long term to see, do we need to buy more space? Do we need to we're growing a lot. So with this growth that we're having, do we need to invest more in real estate? Do we need to, or, expand our warehouses, expand our network a bit more? And then also when things go wrong, what do you do from a very like cost efficient perspective? So that's on a very high level what I do. On a typical, like my typical day, now that we're work from home, it looks very different. But it's typically we kind of start with like a team check-in to just so we're all connected. Like, otherwise it feels a little disconnected. So we all get together and be like, okay, hey guys, this is what I'm planning on doing this week. This is not what my week is looking like. This is my main focus for the week. And it's a lot of I use SQL a lot, because I think the good part about Wayfair is what they say is, look, whether you're an analyst or whether you're like a director or SVP, you need to know SQL. You cannot rely on an analyst to just do this data analysis for you. So that's pretty cool in my opinion. Like it's called manager doers. You have to figure it out. You need to learn. You need to know SQL and learn how to get all of this. I use SQL. It's a lot of there's a lot of meetings now that we're actually working from home. A lot of discussion saying, okay, this is what we're doing. This is the approach we should take. I work cross-functionally with people at the warehouse, with the transportation teams, with our forecasting teams, and so on. And yeah, that's a typical day.
Interesting. In fact, I learned so much today in this webinar. Thank you so much, Shilpa. This is excellent, and I think we got some great insights. So before I get on to the questions, let me just quickly talk about the application process. So if you're looking at applying to your MBA or master's programs, please let us know. My colleague, will just put in a link on the chat window. If you're looking at help with your profile, we would definitely love to help with your profile. You can submit your profile, and we will look at what is your fitment to the kind of program you're looking at. We could chat, we could try and understand your fitment, and then figure out and help you choose the schools you want to apply to in 2021, right? So that's great. So okay, let me now just take up questions. Okay, one second. This always happens. Okay, now let me just take up specific questions. So there are some slightly more profile-based questions. I will see if Shilpa can give in her thoughts, and then I can add to it. So there's someone who says, I'm 4 years working with Capgemini. I've worked for major clients like Cargill and P&G, as an ERP consultant in the supply chain. If I do an MBA in supply chain, what kind of roles should I target as my profile?
So since you already have a consulting background, that would be like a natural path for you to continue in consulting, unless that is not something you want to do. then you can I think you have plenty of options of going into industry. You can look at a manufacturing company. You can look into, again, the different big tech companies, what kind of industry, what kind of specific roles you want to do in. So there's honestly plenty of options. At the end of it, you don't have to choose now. During your MBA or during your program, you may learn more about the different roles and you'll be able to choose then.
Right, perfect. So there's a question over here which says, what are the differences between digital supply chain and conventional supply chain?
Okay, so digital supply chain, I mean, that's not I feel like that may just be a buzzword, because right now everything's digital, right? You're using tools for everything. You're using different kind of analytical software for everything. Whereas conventional supply chain may be more focused on manufacturing versus logistics and so on.
Right, I agree. So there's a question over here which says, would you have chosen UK over US considering the new changes? Well, I think Shilpa made it very clear that she was very clear in applying to US. So I think US was her choice. Yeah. Okay, there's a very specific question here. Do you have ex-military personals in your course? What kind of prospect do these kind of people have in an SCM?
We do have a lot of ex-military folks in the program, whether they're Americans or non-Americans. I think they actually do value your military experience a lot. Even after this, when you're going for a job, every single company values your ex-military experience, and they respect that. So I think the options for you on the table will be the same, but they like having ex-military people there. They respect you guys. They enjoy it.
Right. There's some questions from the YouTube. I'll just pick. There are some which we've already answered, so I'm not going to take that. Some is talking about the coursework and the roles. I think we've already spoken about it, so you might want to just rewind and watch it later. There's one question which says, does a background in SAP help?
I don't think so. It's not going to put someone at an advantage versus another. When you're talking about SAP background, I'm assuming you mean there can be two things, right? You know how to use SAP software and you've used those tools, or you worked at SAP. Again, at the end of it, it comes down to what specific work, the quality of work that you did with it, and how that relates to supply chain, and what are the different kind of values that you showed of why they should pick you. It comes down to that, but I wouldn't say that you have a specific advantage over someone else.
Right. So I have a slightly more longish question. Let me just, read it out. I'm 34 years old with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and master's in energy engineering with 8 years of experience. I have also done MIT SCM courses. I'm assuming they are online. Waiting for a CFX in May 2021. Should I apply for a 1-year master's program because I'll be 36 by then? I don't want to go for a blended program. Do you think a 1-year program makes sense?
So a 1-year program totally makes sense, irrespective of what age you are, what your previous how old you are, right? It really doesn't matter. Like I said, we had people who are super young, who are in their early 20s, versus people who are in their late 40s. So age is really a non-factor here. I think you should figure out what you want to do. It looks like you have kind of different types of work experience. So what do you want to do next? Do you want to do supply chain? Do you want to do an MBA? Do you want to kind of continue working in energy sector and so on? But if you think SCM is the choice for you, go ahead and apply. I think that it totally makes sense.
Right. So there's one question here which says, do you think if somebody wants to shift industries, MS in SCM might be an option?
Definitely. So let's say you want to move from oil and gas into tech, or oil and gas into e-commerce. You have plenty of options to do that through this SEM program. In fact, I moved from a telecommunications tech company to retail and e-commerce. So totally an option.
Right. One question here in terms of financing the masters, did you take help, or what kind of help did you take, especially for your program?
So they have, I think for international students, they offer, like there's this firm called Prodigy that offers you like student loans and like easy access to, I believe pretty good rates, and then option like long-term options of paying it back after the program. So there's, for international students, there's plenty of options, but the most common one is Prodigy.
Yeah, it's called Prodigy Finance. If you want, you can just go
Correct.
to their website and get some. So I have a question here. I'm working as a food and beverage manager in a five-star hotel in India. Um, Please advise if it will be possible for me to switch over to supply chain after the masters or an MBA.
So, if you do want to go into the supply chain industry, yes, this masters will help you with that. I think what will be helpful is kind of relating your past experience with supply chain, why you want to get a supply chain management program, and like what is your interest in moving to the supply chain industry. I think if you kind of stress and show that, it will be helpful for your kind of getting into the program as well.
Right. Right. So, you mentioned that you had 3 years of experience in supply chain before you applied. There's someone who says he has 6 years of experience in supply chain with Honda and Suzuki. Do you think an MS would be a good option or an MBA for this kind of a purpose, this kind of a profile?
So, both are good options that I would say. I think it comes down to the difference is in the program and what you're looking for. For example, MBA is more generalistic, and like if you're not exactly sure that you want to specialize in supply chain management, you would go for an MBA where you have 2 years to figure out what you want to do. You learn about like every single piece. Whereas if you choose to do SEM, you're specializing in SEM, right? As well as it's kind of there's more technical aspects there and more like core supply chain topics.
Right. Right. Okay. I'm sorry, Mahindra. I don't know what your question is. If you could just type down what your question is, maybe we could help you answer that. Okay, I'm a civil engineer with a degree in masters in management. I finished my engineering and masters from a reputed university in UK. I have worked as a project manager for a year, and now working as a BD, business development executive in a MNC. I have total 2.5 of work experience. I've been okay. What all? Which MBA? Okay, so okay. The question is, which MBA do you suggest? I am inclined. This is, too much to assess in this session.
Yeah.
Frankly, maybe you could reach out to us offline, because there's a lot, many things that we would need to process and understand before, giving you some suggestions. So I think we would like to take this offline. You could just drop us an email. Again, I'm going to take only questions which are relevant or in sync with what we are discussing right now. Shilpa, you also mentioned that MSSEM has a blended option too, right? So what is the major difference between the residential one and the blended one?
So for the blended one, you're actually doing a part of the course online on edX. So what people typically do is they spend about a year or 2 years doing like this SCM course on edX. Then then you apply for this SCM blended program. If you get into it, you're doing the first 6 months online. So wherever you are at home, you're doing it. Then for the next 6 months, you're coming to MIT in Cambridge, and then you kind of do it with the rest of the cohort here. Right. Typically, people who are working full-time, who can't get away from work, would do it. For internationals, it does not give you the ability to stay back in the US and work here, because it is not like OPT and STEM eligible. So that's a big difference. So if you're just getting it, if you just want to do a master's degree, awesome. And you want to go back to India or go back to your home country, then that's a good option. And it's cheaper. You can keep working while you do it and things like that. So it has different sorts of benefits.
Yeah, but it's more, I think it's perfect for people who are already working in an organization and looking at a role in the same organization
exactly
at a higher level.
Exactly.
And these kind of courses, a blended course, might help, because you won't.
It's like how MBA versus executive MBA.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that there were so many people with different backgrounds, right? Different experience levels in your class. There's a question here. does someone who's coming with a higher experience have a, slightly more accelerated growth when you take this kind of a program versus somebody with, maybe a lesser experience? Is it, how does the industry look at it, or do they even look at it differently?
So I think when you're like in the end of it, when you're looking for a job, right, you have people coming in to hire at different roles. Like, for example, someone with a 3 years experience versus someone with a 10 years work experience. Let's say you're interviewing for Wayfair. I get a different role versus someone who has 10 years experience, which totally makes sense, right? Like, I'm not aiming for a senior manager or a director position because I do not have the experience that supports that. But I get something that's more suited for with my experience and my needs. So I wouldn't say that someone has more accelerated growth versus the other, but you would go into something that is complementary to your previous background.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you so much, Shilpa. This has been extremely, extremely informational, and we really had fun listening to you and knowing so much more about this course. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this webinar. And I hope it was informational. I hope this was useful. If you want to go back and visit any part of this webinar, you can always go to our YouTube channel and look at it. And I'm sure we would love to answer any more questions. If you have, you can type it on the YouTube video, and we would love to comment and respond to all your questions. Thank you so much, Shilpa.
So
Amazing. We really had
thanks for having me.
we really had a great time, and all the best. Stay safe. Bye
You
bye.
guys
Take
as well.
care.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.